The truck engine whined like it didn't want to make the trip either. Couldn't blame it. It was barely 9 a.m., and already the Texas sun felt like it was trying to bleach the color out of the earth. I rolled the window down, letting in the dry wind and dust, hoping the breeze would do something about the thoughts spinning in my head. That morning, I'd left behind a voicemail from my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, maybe, that I hadn't had the guts to reply to. She said I was distant. I said I was tired. We'd been talking in circles for months, and I didn't know whether I was running from her or just from the version of myself I'd been trying to be. So when the call came in, busted water pump, somewhere way off the main road, a place called Iron Ridge Ranch, I said yes without even checking the distance. It was over 2 hours outside of town. But I needed to drive. I needed to think. Or not think. Sometimes it was hard to tell the difference. I followed the directions scribbled on a grease-stained invoice until the dirt road ended in a wide clearing, and a single-story ranch house sat under the blue sky like it had been there for 100 years. Horses milled around in a far pasture, tails flicking. A windmill creaked somewhere behind the barn. Then I saw him. He was leaning against the wooden fence like he'd been carved out of the land itself. Weather-worn jeans, boots caked in dust, a pale blue shirt rolled up at the sleeves. His face was tanned, sun-creased, like the lines had been etched by years of work and wind, and his hands, thick-fingered, strong, scarred in a way that said he knew how to break and build in equal measure. I slowed the truck, suddenly aware of my oil-stained shirt and the fact that I probably smelled like gasoline and regret. "You the one with the pump trouble?" I called out as I stepped out. He pushed off the fence and walked toward me, a half-smile playing at his lips. "Guess that makes you the one with the fixing hands." His voice was calm, low. Not mocking, but not entirely innocent either. "I'm Dean," I said, clearing my throat. "From the shop in Bastrop. Got your service request." He stuck out his hand. "Call me West." West. Of course he had a name like that. His grip was firm, rough, a little too warm. I pulled back faster than I meant to, hoping he hadn't noticed. He probably had. "I'll show you to the pump," he said, motioning toward the side of the barn. As we walked, he spoke again. "Didn't think anyone'd come out this far. Most folks don't like the quiet." "I like the quiet," I said quickly. "City's too loud anyway." He gave me a look, not unkind, just curious, like he was trying to read a book written in handwriting he almost recognized. The pump was half buried beside a wooden shed, rust streaking the metal casing. It hissed a little when I kicked the side, and I crouched down to take a look. "You got a wrench and maybe a light?" I asked. He nodded and stepped into the barn. I could hear his boots on the wooden floor, the clink of tools, the soft mumble of him talking to himself. When he came back, he handed me the wrench first, then knelt beside me and clicked on a flashlight. His shoulder brushed mine. It wasn't much, just fabric and heat, but I tensed anyway. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah." I lied. He didn't move away. We worked in silence after that, the kind that felt heavier than it should have. I asked a few questions about water pressure and flow. He gave short answers. His eyes stayed on my hands most of the time, or maybe I just imagined that. After a while, I straightened up and stretched my back. "It's gonna take a bit. Looks like something's clogged deep in the line." West nodded. "You got time?" I shrugged. "I make time, especially when it pays." He smirked. "That why you came out here? For the money?" "No," I said too fast, then added, "Needed a break. Life's been complicated." He studied me for a second. Then, voice lower, he said, "You don't seem like the kind that belongs in a rush." "What kind do I seem like?" He didn't answer, just smiled, slow and crooked, then turned and started walking back toward the house. "You thirsty?" he asked over his shoulder. "Got lemonade. Cold." I hesitated, then followed. Inside, the ranch house was surprisingly tidy. Wooden beams across the ceiling, a wide leather couch, the smell of pine soap and something faintly sweet. He poured 2 glasses and leaned against the counter, watching me over the rim. I sipped mine too fast and winced when the cold hit my teeth. "You live out here alone?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Yeah, he said. Just me. Suits me fine. No family? Had some. Now it's just me. He didn't offer more and I didn't press. I knew that tone. I'd used it myself. We stood there for a moment, glasses sweating in our hands. Then he tilted his head, eyes tracing the grease under my fingernails, the tired lines under my eyes. You ever fix more than pumps? He asked suddenly. What do you mean? He gave a soft chuckle and set his glass down. I mean, some things don't just need a wrench. Sometimes folks come out here looking to fix something in themselves. I swallowed, unsure of what to say. The way he looked at me, steady, kind, almost amused, made my skin warm. Then he said it, with a wink that shouldn't have made my heart skip. Hope you can fix more than pipes around here. My mouth opened, then closed. I blinked, laughed awkwardly. He just smiled and walked out of the room. And just like that, I realized this trip was going to be anything but routine. By the time I stepped back outside, the sun had risen high enough to bake the dirt road into clay. The pump hissed again when I approached, as if annoyed I'd left it waiting. I grabbed my tools from the truck bed and crouched down, rolling up my sleeves. Sweat already traced a line down my spine. The Texas heat didn't care if you were heartbroken, hungover, or hiding from something. It just beat down on you until the only thing left was what was real. West appeared a few minutes later with a faded baseball cap and a toolbox in one hand. Figured I'd lend a hand, he said casually, setting the box beside me. You don't have to, I replied, voice muffled by the wrench I was wedging into a stubborn bolt. I want to, he said. Besides, this old pump's been patched more times than a cowboy's heart. I glanced at him, unsure whether it was just a metaphor or something more personal. He smirked but didn't explain. He knelt beside me, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Up close, I noticed the veins in his forearms, the way his shirt clung to his back with sweat. His hands were skilled, knowing where to press, how to loosen, how to hold steady. We passed tools wordlessly at first. Wrench, flathead, clamp, like we'd done this 100 times before. But then came the quiet moments between movements, the ones where curiosity started to seep through the sweat. So what made you get into fixing things? He asked, eyes on the pipe as he tightened a seal. I shrugged. My dad was a mechanic, taught me early on, said it was good to know how to fix what the world breaks. He nodded slowly. World breaks a lot. I glanced sideways at him. You ever fix anything that stayed fixed? He smiled, soft, thoughtful. No, but I found things worth fixing again and again. We worked in silence after that. Not awkward, just thoughtful. The kind of quiet that wraps around you like shade on a hot day. Time passed. I wiped my forehead with the back of my arm and leaned in to adjust the pressure valve. That's when it happened. My hand slipped on the jagged edge of the pump casing. A sharp sting bloomed across my palm. Damn! I hissed, yanking my hand back. West was on his feet immediately. Let me see. It's fine, I muttered. Even as blood started to drip down my fingers. He took my hand before I could argue, cradling it gently in his rougher ones. You've got city boy skin, he said with a crooked grin. Soft but stubborn. I wanted to pull back, but the warmth of his touch held me in place. He guided me toward the barn without letting go. Inside, the air was cooler. He set me on an overturned bucket and grabbed a first aid kit from a shelf. When he knelt again, it felt different this time. His thigh brushed mine, steady and intentional. This might sting, he warned. He cleaned the cut carefully, dabbing it with a damp cloth. I watched his hands move, gentle, precise, like the wound wasn't just skin deep. When he wrapped the bandage around my hand, his fingers lingered longer than they needed to. Thanks, I said, quieter than I meant to. His eyes met mine for a second. There was something there, unspoken, heavy. Then I looked away. I stood abruptly. I should finish the job. He didn't stop me, just nodded and followed. Back at the pump, the silence had changed. It was fuller now, a little tense. My heartbeat thudded harder than it should have for a guy turning a valve and screwing in a new washer. I kept repeating the same thought in my head like a chant. I have a girlfriend. I have a girlfriend. But it felt like a script I'd memorized too long ago. Something recited, not felt. Because all I could feel was the memory of his fingers brushing my skin. The way his voice dipped when he spoke. How I hadn't wanted to pull my hand away as much as I pretended to. By late afternoon, the pump finally coughed back to life. A sputter, then a flow. I stood back, wiping my brow with a rag and watching the steady stream of water pour into the trough. Good as new, I said. West clapped a hand on my shoulder. I knew you had it in you. I stiffened slightly at the touch, but didn't move. His hand lingered just a beat longer than expected. Then he dropped it and stepped back. We loaded the tools into the truck bed, neither of us saying much. The job was done. That should have been my cue to leave. But I didn't reach for the keys. He must have noticed. He leaned against the truck and crossed his arms, squinting into the sun. You want another lemonade? I hesitated. He tilted his head. Stay a bit. You look like you've been running so long you forgot what it feels like to stop. That line settled somewhere in my chest like a stone dropped in water. Quiet, but deep. I didn't answer right away. My hand still ached, but less than before. Maybe it wasn't the cut that had needed tending. I nodded once, and followed him back toward the house. The farmhouse door creaked open, and the cool air inside wrapped around me like a quiet welcome. The difference between the heat outside and the stillness within was sharp, like walking into someone else's pause in the middle of my own storm. West kicked his boots off just inside the door, and I followed suit, wiping my hands on my jeans. The place smelled like cedarwood and bread, with a faint trace of hay that clung to the beams like memory. The walls were a soft beige, worn with time, and the furniture looked hand-built, strong and simple. A quilt draped across the back of the couch. A bookshelf sat crooked in the corner, stacked with old paperbacks and yellowing manuals. I made chili earlier, he said over his shoulder, walking toward the kitchen. Wasn't expecting company, but it should still be warm. I don't want to intrude, I replied quickly. Too quickly. He glanced back at me, a flicker of something behind his smile. If I didn't want you here, you wouldn't be. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything else. My mouth felt dry, but it wasn't from the heat this time. While he reheated the food, I sat stiffly at the small wooden table, eyes wandering the room, pretending not to look at him too long. He moved with that same quiet confidence he had outside. Like nothing about him rushed, yet everything got done. He handed me a bowl and sat across from me. For a while, we ate in silence, the kind that stretched but didn't snap. Every now and then, I caught him watching me. Or maybe I was watching him and blaming it on the reflection in the glass. The food was simple, hearty. The kind that fills your stomach and empties your head. And maybe that's what I needed, to be full of something that wasn't regret or confusion for once. At one point, he cleared his throat and said, You know, I get a lot of things breaking down around here. Fence posts, tractors, even the weather's unpredictable some weeks. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a tough life. He grinned faintly. Maybe, or maybe it's just quiet. There was something in the way he said that, like quiet wasn't peace but absence. I looked down at my hands, the bandage on my palm, the way my fingers twitched with things I didn't know how to say. Then he leaned back in his chair and said it. Half teasing, half something else. Maybe I'm the one who needs fixing. I let out a short laugh. I'm not licensed for that. He didn't smile, just looked at me, eyes steady. Didn't say I needed a professional. My heart stuttered. Suddenly, the air felt thick again. He wasn't trying to be seductive. There was no smirk, no calculated glance. It was just honest, maybe a little vulnerable. I pushed my bowl away and stood. I should head out before it gets dark. He nodded slowly, stood too, walked with me toward the door. Neither of us spoke. But when I opened the screen, the air outside was different, soft and wet. A fine drizzle whispered against the porch, silver threads laced across the horizon. The dirt road already looked slick. Wes stood beside me, watching the rain. Texas weather changes her mind faster than most people. I've driven in worse, I said. though my voice didn't carry much conviction. He didn't push, didn't say I should stay, just kept looking out at the mist like it didn't matter what I chose. But he hoped I'd choose this, and I did. Without saying it aloud, I stepped back inside. "I've got a guest room," he offered quietly. "Sheets are clean. Door sticks a little, don't mind that." "Thanks," I murmured. He led me down a narrow hallway to a room with a twin bed, faded blue quilt, and a window that looked out over the east pasture. It was spare but clean, like the rest of the house. "I'll let you settle," he said. "Dinner's on the stove if you want more. I'll be in the front room." I nodded, and he left, the door clicking softly behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands on my knees, listening to the rain tap against the glass. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably her again. But I didn't pull it out. I didn't want to explain where I was. Hell, I didn't even know what I'd say. Instead, I peeled off my damp shirt, toed off my boots, and laid back on the bed. The ceiling fan creaked above me. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard shifted. And then, faintly, I heard it. Guitar strings. Soft, hesitant at first, then warmer. A simple, slow melody, old country maybe, or something older than that. Not perfect, but heartfelt. Notes that rose and fell like someone remembering instead of performing. I stood quietly and padded back into the hallway. The living room door was open just a sliver. I peeked through. Wes sat by the window, barefoot, his back to me. He cradled the guitar like it was something fragile. His head was bowed, dark hair curling at the nape of his neck. The lamplight cast long shadows, painting him in gold and shadow. There was something achingly beautiful in that moment. Not just the way he looked, but the solitude around him. It wasn't loneliness that sought pity. It was a man who had made peace with silence, who found rhythm in stillness, and maybe, just maybe, had room for someone else inside it. I watched for a minute longer, then slipped back to the guest room. Laid there in the dark, eyes wide open, listening to music and rain. Not moving, not escaping, just being. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like enough. I woke up to the smell of coffee and something frying in a pan. For a split second, I forgot where I was. The window framed a hazy pasture in the soft light of morning, dew still clinging to the grass. A horse whinnied in the distance, low and sleepy. And for once, the absence of car horns or buzzing phones didn't make me anxious. It felt like quiet had finally found a place inside me too. I pulled on yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt from my truck bag, then padded barefoot down the hallway. West was already in the kitchen, barefoot too, hair a little messy, sleeves rolled up as he flipped eggs in a cast-iron skillet. His shirt hung loose on him, collar slightly askew. There was something deeply comforting in the way he stood there, like a fixture in the space. Something solid and quietly kind. "Mornin'," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "Morning." My voice came out rough with sleep. "You eat eggs." "I eat anything someone else makes," I said, and he chuckled. We sat at the little table again, but the energy had shifted. Last night's tension had melted into something calmer, almost companionable. He passed the pepper without asking. I offered to toast the bread before he had to. We didn't say much at first, but it didn't feel like we had to. After a few bites, I asked, "So, do you always play guitar at night, or was that a one-time show?" He looked slightly embarrassed, cheeks flushing under the stubble. "Didn't know I had an audience." "You didn't," I said. "I just heard it. It was nice." He gave a small smile, eyes fixed on his plate. "Been playing since I was a kid, back when my folks still ran this place." "You grew up here?" "Yeah." He leaned back in his chair, hands resting on the table, fingers idly tapping. "Was just me and my brother after my dad passed. We tried to keep it running. Didn't always do it right, but we loved it." There was a pause. His voice dropped just a little. "He died 2 winters ago. Pneumonia. I buried him right past the east pasture. After that, it got real quiet out here." I looked at him, really looked. The way his jaw tightened at the memory. The way he didn't blink when he said it. Grief that had turned into part of him. Not something he carried, but something he'd woven into who he was. "I'm sorry," I said softly. He nodded once. "Thanks." Another silence. But it was warm this time. Safe. He broke it with a quiet sigh. "I guess I got used to things falling apart. You learn to patch the holes. But there are days I wake up and wonder if I'm just keeping something alive that's already halfway gone." His eyes flicked up to meet mine. "That ever happened to you?" I didn't answer right away. Just stared at the mug in my hands, the chipped rim, the steam rising in slow curls. "Yeah," I said finally. "That's actually why I took this job. I needed to drive somewhere. I needed to not be where I was." I looked at him then. I was with someone. A long time. We weren't even fighting anymore. Just going through the motions. She said I wasn't present. I said I was tired. But really, I just felt. I hesitated, then found the word. Half alive. His hand moved slightly on the table, fingers resting a few inches from mine. Not touching, but close enough to notice. Like he was giving me the option, not the obligation. And for the first time in months, I didn't flinch from contact. I didn't look away. I slid my hand a little closer, until the tips of our fingers barely touched. He didn't move, just breathed out slowly, like something had settled inside him too. We stayed that way, our hands grazing, our plates cold, our coffee forgotten. Later that day, I helped him clear out an old trough, fixed a loose plank on the fence, and fed the horses. We didn't talk much, but everything about the way we moved, together, side by side, sweat dripping, shirt sticking. It felt less like labor and more like rhythm, like life had a pattern again, even if it was just a simple one. That evening, after dinner, the rain came again. Just a faint mist, enough to scent the porch and send the horses sheltering. Inside, he lit a small fire in the hearth, and I sat on the floor near it, wrapped in one of the old quilts. West brought over 2 mugs of tea, honey and lemon, and sat beside me, cross-legged. "This is the quiet I like," he said, voice low. I nodded. "Me too." We sipped in silence. The fire cracked gently. After a while, he set his mug down and turned toward me. I did the same. Our knees brushed. He leaned in slowly, no rush, no pressure. Just a soft, careful motion like he was offering something he wasn't sure I'd accept. When our lips touched, it wasn't fire or heat or desperation. It was warmth. It was relief. It was the kind of kiss that didn't ask for anything except honesty. I exhaled against him, hand lifting to rest lightly on his shoulder. He kissed me again. Still soft, still slow. The kind of closeness you grow into, not fall into. When we parted, he stayed close, forehead resting against mine. "I'm not trying to confuse you," he said. I wanted to know what it felt like. "You and me both," I whispered. We fell asleep that night on the couch, limbs tangled, fire low. Nothing more than held hands, shared breath, and a silence that no longer felt empty. Before I drifted off, I turned toward him and whispered the first truth I'd meant in a long time. "I don't feel broken anymore." He didn't reply. He just held me closer. And that was more than enough. Days passed like they didn't care to be counted. There was no schedule out at the ranch, just the rhythm of sunrise, feedings, small repairs, and the way West's laughter began to echo more freely around the place. I'd come to fix a broken water pump, but somehow, I ended up fixing a gate hinge, an old radio, a torn saddle strap, and maybe something in myself I hadn't even realized was fractured. We settled into a rhythm that felt suspiciously like peace. Mornings started with coffee on the porch, the kind where you don't talk much because the silence already says enough. Then we'd ride out to the fields, West teaching me how to sit proper in the saddle, how to signal with my knees, how to not look like a city boy holding on for dear life. I still fell off once. He laughed until he couldn't breathe and then offered me his hand, calloused and warm. "You all right, cowboy?" he teased. "I'm fine," I grumbled, brushing off dirt, my ego more bruised than my hip. "Well," he said, tossing me a canteen, "you sure fall pretty." And damn him, I smiled. Afternoons were for work, fencing, mending gear, checking on livestock. Evenings brought slow meals, barefoot dancing in the kitchen to crackling old records, and sometimes just lying on the couch together, the weight of him beside me enough to make my chest feel full and steady. I should have felt like a guest overstaying my welcome. Instead, it felt like I belonged, like this strange, dusty place, and this quiet man with sun-browned skin and tired eyes had been waiting for me without knowing it. But life doesn't let you forget that you have another one somewhere else. The call came just after sunset. I was standing out by the fence, watching the sky bleed into violet, when my phone buzzed in my back pocket. Her name lit up the screen. I stared at it for a long second. Then I answered. "Dean." Her voice was sharp, like the sound of heels on tile. "Where the hell are you?" "I told you," I said carefully. "I took a job outside Bastrop. That was 5 days ago. You haven't checked in. You don't answer my texts. I needed some space. From me." I didn't answer right away. I looked back at the ranch house, where West was lighting the porch lantern, humming something under his breath. "I just needed quiet," I said. There was a pause, then a scoff. "So what, you're living out there now? Playing cowboy?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Dean?" she snapped. "Because this feels like you disappearing. And maybe I was. Or maybe I was finally appearing somewhere that made sense." "I'll call you later," I said and hung up. My hand shook a little as I slid the phone back into my pocket. Not from fear, from clarity, like something inside me had finally clicked into place. Later that night, I found West on the porch, his guitar resting beside him, 2 mugs already poured. He didn't ask what the call was about, just handed me the mug and watched the stars with me. "I think I need to tell you something," I said after a while. He looked at me, expression unreadable. "I didn't come here to run away. At least that's not what I thought at first. But maybe I was. From her. From myself. From feeling stuck." I took a breath. The kind you take before you jump into something deep. "But now, I don't want to run anymore." He didn't say anything. Just waited, letting me find the words. "This place, it's not complicated. It's quiet, but it's alive. You laugh with your whole chest. You fix things without asking for thanks. And you listen without trying to fix me." He looked down, a soft smile at the corner of his lips. I reached over, placed my hand on his knee, steady. "I came to fix your pump," I said, voice low. "But you fixed me. That broke whatever wall was still between us." He turned to me, eyes shimmering with something unspoken, and leaned in. Not rushed, not hungry, just sure. Our lips met, softer than the first time, but deeper. A kiss full of choice, not chance. When we pulled back, I rested my forehead against his and closed my eyes. "I want to stay." "You sure?" he whispered. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it real." The next morning, I called my boss and said I wouldn't be coming back to town, that I'd taken a longer-term gig fixing up a ranch outside of Bastrop. He didn't ask many questions, just said he'd keep my spot open, and I thanked him, even though I didn't plan on returning. Then I called her, told her the truth, gently, but completely. No excuses, no second guesses. She cried. I apologized, but I didn't apologize for staying, because some places call to you, and some people feel like the kind of silence you've been searching for. That night, I unpacked my bag into the guest room's small dresser. West passed by the door and said, "You know, there's more space in my room." I grinned. "I figured you'd say that," and I followed him down the hall, barefoot and smiling. By the time October rolled around, the mornings came cooler, and the ranch had settled into a rhythm that matched the one inside me. I wasn't the guy who came out here months ago, sweaty and short-tempered, dragging heartbreak and city noise behind me like a busted muffler. That version of me had unpacked his last bag and folded himself into the quiet here, not out of surrender, but something closer to becoming. Most days started before the sun, coffee mugs steaming on the porch railing, West's hand brushing mine as we stood side by side, wordless, watching the land stretch awake. He still teased me when I tripped in the chicken coop. I still rolled my eyes when he sang off-key while mucking the stalls. But there was laughter now, the kind that came easy. Our lives had woven together without force. Just work, warmth, and the comfort of someone else's presence filling up the empty spaces. The ranch wasn't perfect. We had broken hinges, stubborn horses, dry seasons. But it was ours. And every day I laid down a piece of myself here, it felt like I was planting something I hadn't known I could grow. Not just roots, but love. Real, steady, soft-edged love. One afternoon in mid-November, we stood shoulder to shoulder beside the old water pump. The same one that brought me here. It had started stuttering again the week before. Groaning, sputtering like it was ready to give up for good. West had tried to coax it along, like he always did with aging things that reminded him of home. But this time, even he knew it was time to let it go. "We could weld it again," he muttered, crouched down in the dirt, eyeing the corroded valve. I raised an eyebrow. "You said that last time. And the time before that." He sighed, lips twitching. All right, maybe it's time." We loaded the new one into the bed of the truck and drove it out together, dust trailing behind us like memory. It wasn't a hard install, easier than most jobs I'd done, really, but something about doing it with him side by side, our hands brushing now and then as we tightened bolts and measured water flow. It felt like ceremony. When the new pump whirred to life, smooth and strong, West leaned back on his heels and wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. "Guess we're in business," he said. I glanced at him, sunlight glinting off his cheek, the laugh lines deeper now. Not from age, but from use. "We are," I said softly. "We really are." He turned toward me, eyes squinting under the brim of his hat. "What's that look for?" I shrugged. "Just thinking. The first day I showed up, this old thing nearly took my hand off." He grinned. "I remember. You were bleeding all over my barn and pretending it was fine. You gave me lemonade and a look I didn't know how to read." West stepped closer, resting his hand lightly on my chest. "You figured it out, though?" I nodded. "Eventually." We stood there for a moment, just listening to the hum of the pump and the wind tugging at the grass. The horses grazed lazily in the distance. The world felt still in a way it rarely had before. "I came here to repair something broken," I said quietly. "And I left whole." His hand curled into the fabric of my shirt. "You didn't leave," he murmured. I smiled. "Exactly." That night, we sat on the porch with bowls of stew balanced on our knees, watching the stars blink to life. West rested his feet in my lap, his hat tilted low over his eyes. I reached up and tugged it off, tossing it onto the rail. "Hey!" he protested, smirking. "You can see more without it," I said. He leaned in then, not for anything big, just a kiss against my temple, gentle and grounding. And I thought I could sit like this for the rest of my life. The next morning we saddled up early. The sky was still painted in ink and ash when we mounted the horses and rode out toward the ridge. Neither of us spoke much. The hoofbeats were enough music for both of us. As we crested the hill, dawn cracked open across the horizon, gold spilling over the pasture like someone had torn the sky open just for us. Mist curled low along the fence line. The air smelled of fresh hay and something sweet in the distance. Maybe honeysuckle, maybe just the kind of happiness you can't name. West glanced over at me and gave a soft whistle. "You ever seen something that made you feel small in a good way?" I nodded. "Right now." He smiled, then nudged his horse forward into a light gallop, looking back at me over his shoulder with a grin. "Race you to the creek." I laughed and kicked my stirrups. We tore down the ridge, whooping like kids, dirt flying, wind slapping against our sleeves. Our laughter echoed across the land, wild and full and alive. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I felt like I'd finally arrived. Closing line. I came here to repair something broken, and left whole. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes love can find you in the most unexpected places. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to hear your story too. Until next time, stay kind, and stay open to love.